Okay, let's talk some chess. We have an exciting attacking game from Paul Keres, often known as a defensive player, but not in this game, versus Laszlo Szabo. This was played in Hungary in 1955, and Keres has the white pieces, and we'll get right into it. Keres opens with e4, and black responds with c5, the Sicilian defense. Keres brings his knight out to f3, and black plays the open Sicilian, knight to c6. The idea, did not mean to flip the board. The idea here is that both knights are sort of eyeing this d4 square, and d4 is in fact the move that Keres plays. Even though the white pawn is attacked twice by the black pieces, it's also defended twice by the white pieces, so you're not losing any material here. And black indeed does make the trade on d4, and Keres puts his knight on d4. Black continues in the usual way, bringing his knight to f6, and Keres responds in kind with knight to c3. And here black pushes his own pawn to d6. Keres now develops his dark square bishop to g5. This obviously attacks the knight and gets the bishop deep into black's position. And here black plays e6, which temporarily pins the knight to the queen, as the bishop obviously is eyeing the queen on d8. Keres develops his queen to d2. This is an early indication that maybe Keres wants to castle queenside, and black wisely puts his bishop on e7. This blocks the unpins the knight, because now it blocks the bishop. And now, if the knight does move somewhere, then there's a double attack coming on white's bishop. So this is a nice square for the black dark squared bishop. Keres now castles queenside, and black castles kingside, and now we have an exciting setup because the two sides have castled on opposite sides, and both sides are going to be attacking the other player's king, and it's going to be an exciting game. So here Keres starts the attack by pushing f4. It's not the best move, but it looks like a very aggressive and good move. You're getting pieces closer to the enemy king, and here black responds by pushing his own pawn to a6. And Keres played the move that he prepared, which was e5. Now he has support to play e5 because of this f4 pawn. Black takes the pawn on e5, and now you can't take back just yet, because if you take back, then black will just happily take with the knight on e5, and now white is down a pawn. So instead, Keres first takes the pawn on takes the knight on c6. Black takes back, and now white takes on e5, and now you have a pawn that's pretty deep in black's camp and is attacking this knight. Black just puts his knight on d7. This knight to d7 move is actually a nice little move. First, it opens up a double attack on white's bishop, so white will have to Keres will have to do something about that. But it also means that the knight is still eyeing this f6 square, which is going to be a very important square, as we will see later on. So Keres defends his bishop with h4, also just pushing those pawns closer to the king, and black puts his rook on this semi-open file on b8, trying to get an attack of his own going. Keres, a nice sneaky move here, brings his queen to e3. This is going to be a more useful square for the queen, and it also means that the rook is now eyeing the black queen, so the knight cannot move because the rook will just take it. Whereas before, if you move the knight, then this is just a queen trade, and that's okay. So he moves the queen. And now black moves his rook to e8, and this seems like kind of a weird move, but the reason for it is the bishop is under attack, and by white's bishop, so the queen cannot move from the the x-ray of the rook. So black is now defending this bishop, which gives the queen freedom to move about the board. Keres kind of takes advantage from this slow move and does a rook lift to h3, and now black plays the move he prepared, which is queen to a5. Now the queen and the rook are hoping to mount an attack against the white king. Keres happily trades off this bishop on e7. This could be a nasty bishop if it gets to the b4 square. It can join the rook and the queen on the attack, so Keres wants to trade it off, and trade it off he does. And now Keres just calmly puts his rook on g3. Very simple move, but very simple idea. Is just lining up the rook with the enemy king, which is always a good idea. Black puts his rook back on e8. It's never very fun when you make a move and then reverse the move a couple moves later, or a move later. So probably not the best idea here. And now, because black kind of abandoned the 7th rank with the rook, Keres actually takes advantage by taking the knight on d7. And this is an exchange sacrifice. Black is happy to take. Black trades It takes the rook with the bishop. The reason for it, as we will see, is that the knight was guarding this really important f6 square, and now the rook just takes that away and totally weakens the defense of this square. The other thing is that this bishop is not really doing much. It's completely blocked by the two pawns. It's going to have a tough time getting into the game. So you develop the bishop, but it's not a very dangerous bishop right now. Keres develops his own bishop, bishop to d7, and now things are starting to look a little bit scary for black. You have the bishop and the rook bearing down on the king. The queen is going to jump into the game. This was technically a mistake for black. A computer here thinks this before this was a winning, or sorry, this was a mistake for Keres. Before the computer thinks this is a winning position for white. This move allows black to get back to equality with rook to b4. The idea here is that, this actually, although this doesn't look like a very defensible position, there's not much white can do here. And black needs to mount an attack of his own. Maybe brings the rook over to b8. And this would keep equality and mean it's an even game. Unfortunately, that's not what black played. Black saw kind of this threat of queen to g5. For example, imagine if you play rook to b4, then queen to g5, and now this looks super scary. You have the rook and the queen eyeing this g7 pawn. If you play g6, this h5 move is coming. The bishop is zooming in here, and this looks like a scary position to play. Computer would defend well, and computer says it's fine. But that it's a tough position for a human to play, so I don't really blame black for playing h6, which takes the g5 square away from the queen. But Keres says, okay, you want let me put my queen on g5? I'm going to sneakily put my queen on f4. This doesn't look like it's achieving anything, but it actually is going to allow the queen to get in a very dangerous position, as we will see. Here, black makes another mistake. It's tough to find a good move here, but he brings the king to f8. Trying to get it out of the path of the bishop, but he also puts it on the path of the queen. And now there's a winning move here for Keres. So take a second to see if you can find it. Okay, hopefully you made the sacrifice and played rook takes on g7. Looks like a crazy move. You're just giving up a rook for what seems like nothing. The key with any sacrifice is that you need to be making a threat. So let's say if black plays some silly move here, then the threat is clear. The queen just takes on f7, and that's checkmate. If the king tries to run away, maybe escape to the queen side, it's going to be checkmate in two moves. Queen takes on f7, king retreats, and then this is checkmate. So there is very much a threat, and when there's a threat, that means you have to take, or generally means you're going to take the piece that is being offered as a sacrifice, which black does. Black takes on f7, but now this allowed for Keres' sort of whole plan, getting this pawn to e5, getting rid of this knight on d7. He puts his queen on f6. The queen is defended by the pawn. There's no knight here that can take the queen, and now this is just a total annihilating check for Keres. So the king, the bishop is slicing this way. The king doesn't have any squares to go to. He decides on f8, but other squares wouldn't be any better. And now Keres plays the finishing blow, which is bishop to g6. You can't take the bishop, obviously, because the pawn is pinned. And now, no matter what you play, there are no checks in this position for black. No matter what you play, if you try to run away with the king, you're going to get queen takes on f7, king to h8, queen to h7, checkmate. If you try to defend this pawn and play rook to e7, this obviously defends the pawn. Then the queen will just deliver checkmate on h8, and the king has no squares to go to, and the rook that you just moved is blocking its escape square on e7. So after Keres played this move, black resigned, and we have a really fun two different castling sides and sacrifice attacking game from Paul Keres. So hope you liked it, and we'll see you next time.